A lioness collapsed at the feet of a massive grizzly bear, her cub clinging to life just steps away. No one could believe what she did next, and even fewer could believe how the bear responded. What happened in the middle of that forest wasn't a fight for territory. It was a plea for mercy, and the world would never look at wild animals the same again. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. The sun was setting over the northern rim of the Cascades Mountains. That golden hour when the light turns everything it touches into gold and shadow. Deep in the forest, silence reigned. But silence in the wild doesn't mean safety. It often means something is watching. A grizzly bear named a Grizzly Khan, known by rangers for his unusual tolerance around other wildlife, lumbered slowly through the high pines. Scars along his flanks told stories few had witnessed, but Khan didn't look for trouble. He avoided it until that day. The wind carried a sound no bear should have cared about. A cry, not a warning, not a threat, a plea, sharp, desperate, motherly. Khan stopped. Below, in a clearing torn by panic, a lioness named Ars Leo stumbled through the brush, her chest heaving, eyes wide with terror. Foreign to these parts, she had clearly escaped or been released from a defunct wildlife facility. She was out of place, out of strength, and out of time. Behind her, a whimpering cub, barely able to stand. Ahead of her, a silent grizzly. Most predators would see each other as rivals. One would chase the other off, or worse. But Leo did something unthinkable. She lowered her head and crawled toward Khan, her entire body trembling with desperation, not aggression. She didn't growl. She didn't bare her teeth. She begged. Her cub wheezed, collapsed in the ferns behind her, poisoned perhaps, or snake, bitten. Something was killing it. And Khan, he just stood there, still watching. Then with one heavy breath, the grizzly turned away, not to leave, but to walk toward the cub. Above, a red-tailed hawk circled once, screeched, and flew off. A storm was coming, and no one in that forest, not man, not beast, could have predicted what Khan would do next. The air grew still. Khan stood a few feet from the trembling lioness and her cub, his breath visible in the cooling air, the sun slicing gold through the treetops. His massive chest rose and fell slowly, not with fear, but with deliberation. A grizzly bear knows what a wounded animal smells like. Khan knew, and he knew Leo had no fight left in her. She had given herself over to fate. But the cub was still alive. The grizzly stepped closer. His paw landed beside the cub with a dull thud. The lioness flinched but didn't move. She simply whimpered, a low, mournful sound that pierced deeper than any roar. Khan leaned his head down, sniffing the cub's flank. The little lion's breath was shallow, its eyes barely open, its body limp from whatever venom or sickness gripped it. And Khan paused. He looked at the cub, then up at Leo, then back down again. No one can explain what happened next. Not the wildlife researchers who later studied the scene, not the ranger who arrived hours too late. Because what Khan did defied every predator instinct known to man. He sat right there beside the cub, not to dominate, not to feed, but to Zir's guard. The lioness, stunned, crept forward inch by inch until she could press her muzzle against her cub's tiny chest. She let out a deep, guttural breath and collapsed fully beside Khan. For the first time in hours, she didn't look over her shoulder because the bear had become her shield. As the wind picked up and clouds thickened overhead, Khan rose again. He moved off the trail briefly, his nose in the air, searching. A few minutes later, he returned, dragging something in his jaws. A crushed root, possibly Sesson wild ginseng or angelica, known by locals to have some healing effect on infections and bites. Khan dropped it beside the cub, then sat again, watching, waiting. The lioness didn't understand what it was, but she didn't question him. In that moment, her fate and the cub's belonged to the grizzly. They stayed that way for hours. Khan would occasionally stand, sniff the cub, then look around as if waiting for danger. A wolf cry sounded in the distance, but none came near because the smell of bear kept them all at bay. The lioness fell into a light sleep, her body curled protectively around her cub. And Khan, he stayed awake, unmoving, unblinking. When the storm broke that night, heavy rain falling in sheets, Khan stood like a monument, his thick fur absorbing the water as he shielded the mother and cub beneath the trees. A predator, a protector, a paradox. Rain lashed the forest like 1,000 tiny whips, tearing through the canopy and soaking the earth until the ground turned soft and treacherous. The air smelled of pine and electricity. The storm was no longer just above. It was inside the forest now. Khan stood motionless. His hulking body was a barrier against the worst of it, shielding the fragile lion cub, and the lioness still curled tightly around her baby. Each time thunder cracked, she winced. But the bear never flinched. He watched the tree line. He listened because Khan knew something was coming. Hours into the storm movement, low, silent, calculating. A shadow darted between two trees. Then a second. Wolves, graybacks, the forest's quiet assassins. And Khan could smell it. They were hungry. The storm had disrupted their hunt, and now they had caught wind of something unusual, something weak. A lion cub, a lioness too tired to fight, and one bear. Khan stepped away from the shelter of the trees and moved to higher ground. His silhouette rose in the moonlight like a statue of war, a warning. But wolves don't fear symbols. They test. A young male crept closer, teeth bared, body low. Khan waited, then exploded forward with a roar that rattled the air. Trees echoed with the sound, and rain scattered like mist around his charge. The wolf skidded back, stunned, but it didn't run. Neither did the rest. Khan stood his ground, his chest heaving, breath loud and wild. The pack circled. They weren't foolish, but they were desperate. The lioness, sensing what was happening, tried to rise. She couldn't. Her legs buckled, her ribs too sore, her spirit too spent. Khan glanced back at her just once and chose. He ran toward the wolves. It was chaos. Snarls and fur and rain all tangled in seconds. Khan swung his paw with crushing weight, sending one wolf sprawling. Another lunged at his flank and was tossed like a sack of moss. But it wasn't a victory. It was survival. One wolf managed to sink its teeth into Khan's shoulder. He roared, spinning, tearing the attacker free. Blood mixed with rain, soaking the earth in silence between strikes. The wolves didn't retreat until Khan let out a final, thunderous sound deeper than rage. It wasn't just warning. It was claim. This clearing, this ground, these animals were his to protect, and they believed him. Minutes passed. Then the forest stilled. One by one, the wolves vanished into the mist, not defeated, but denied. Khan, breathing hard, limped back to the clearing. He was wounded. A deep gash on his shoulder and a bleeding paw. But he didn't stop. He returned to the lioness and collapsed beside her, body touching hers gently. The cub whimpered once, then drifted into sleep. Khan's eyes slowly closed as the rain eased to a soft whisper on the leaves above. And the storm, the one inside and out, finally broke. The sun broke gently over the ridgeline, not with brilliance, but with the soft golden glow that only comes after the worst kind of storm. It filtered through the torn branches, glinting off the soaked earth and blood-stained ferns like light touching broken glass. The forest had survived the night, but not without scars. Khan awoke slowly. His side ached. Dried blood crusted on his shoulder where the wolf had bitten deep. Every movement sent shocks of pain down his spine, but still he turned his massive head to check on them. The lioness stirred beside him, her eyes opened, weak but aware. The cub, small, fragile, but breathing, rested beneath her paw. They had made it through together. Not far away, on a trail winding through the forest edge, a park ranger named Lucas had been tracking strange sounds reported the night before. Locals had claimed they'd heard screams, roars, and a storm like none before. What Lucas found when he stepped into that clearing would stay with him forever. He froze. Less than 30 feet away stood a grizzly bear soaked in blood and mud, flanked by a lioness and her cub. A single human instinct rang in Lucas's chest: danger. His hand brushed the tranquilizer rifle on his back, but something stopped him. The bear wasn't standing. The lioness wasn't growling. They weren't fighting. They were leaning on each other. Lucas lowered his hand. He crouched slowly, observing. The lioness noticed him first. Her ears flicked toward the sound of his boots on wet ground. But instead of running, she merely watched. Khan lifted his head too. His eyes met Lucas's. What the ranger saw wasn't aggression. It was exhaustion and something else: recognition, not of him, but of something older, something instinctual, a presence that did not wish to harm. Very gently, Lucas pulled out his satellite phone and called the sanctuary team. "You're not going to believe what I found," he whispered. "And no, I'm not intervening. Not yet. I think they're taking care of each other." By mid-morning, the sanctuary's mobile vet unit arrived, staying well back. Lucas stayed in the clearing alone, his voice low, his movements calm. He laid out clean water in a steel bowl and placed it near the lioness, far enough not to provoke Khan. The bear sniffed it first, then, to everyone's disbelief, nudged it toward the cub. The lioness licked her cub's ear. It stirred and drank. Khan sat back, groaning under the weight of his wounds. And as the sunlight warmed their backs, Lucas took out a small notepad and, for the first time in his 19-year career, wrote the word "mercy." Not for his report, but for himself. That morning, no cages were built, no dart was fired. Just a man who watched what happens when nature does what we rarely do: choose compassion over survival. 2 days passed. The clearing had become a sanctuary, not in name, but in silence. The rangers kept their distance. The vet team set up camp half a mile away, venturing in only to drop food and clean water. They followed one rule: do not disturb the bond, and that bond was changing everything. Khan's wounds had begun to clot, but infection loomed. He walked stiffly, each step weighted with pain, yet he remained close to the lioness and cub. The lioness had gained back some strength. She cleaned her cub obsessively, and even let Khan rest his massive head near hers. When the cub cried, Khan would shift and gently nudge it with his snout. Awkwardly but tenderly. Lucas watched from afar through binoculars. Every note he scribbled felt like a story no one would believe. The bear defers to the lioness. The lioness trusts the bear. The cub trusts both. But the world doesn't run on miracles. The sanctuary director, Dr. Alara Vances, arrived by helicopter on the third morning. She was pragmatic, compassionate, but trained in policy and conservation law. 3 wild predators from different continents couldn't coexist freely. It was a matter of containment or euthanasia. She met Lucas at the edge of the trail. "This can't go on," she said. "We need to separate them. At least the lioness and cub. The bear's too wounded to relocate anyway." Lucas didn't argue. He just handed her the binoculars. She looked through the lenses. Khan was lying down, licking his paw. The lioness was curled against his back, the cub between them, chewing on a pine cone. Dr. Vance said nothing for a long time. Finally, she lowered the binoculars. "We wait," she said. "We wait until they make the first move." That afternoon, something shifted. The lioness stood slowly, purposefully. Her cub climbed unsteadily to his paws. Khan lifted his head, ears twitching. The lioness looked at him, a long, still gaze. Then she nudged her cub and began to walk, not away from Khan, but toward the tree line. Khan stood. He followed. Dr. Vance and Lucas moved in carefully. When they reached the edge of the glade, they found something astonishing. The 3 animals had walked together until they reached a fork in the trees, a natural crossroads. There, the lioness stopped. Khan stopped beside her. The cub looked between them, and the lioness licked Khan's face once, then turned. She led her cub down the western path toward open land, where wildlife officers could later intercept and care for them. Khan remained at the fork, watching until they disappeared. Then he turned and walked back into the forest alone. No cages, no sedation, no violence, just choice. Dr. Vance whispered almost to herself. They decided better than we ever could. The forest was quiet again. No more storms, no more wolves, no more urgency. Just the hush of tall pine needles brushing in the wind and the faint memory of a story no one had words to explain. Khan had returned to the deeper woods. Rangers lost track of him within days, his prints fading between riverbanks and ridgelines. No one collared him. No one dared, because some creatures, like some stories, were meant to roam freely. The lioness and her cub were safely guided to a protected reserve 2 weeks later. Vets confirmed the cub had survived a venomous snake bite only because of the shelter, the warmth, and the time Khan gave him. The lioness adapted quickly to the sanctuary, but she never took to the other lions. She preferred the outskirts, resting beneath trees, watching the sky, as if waiting for something she knew would never return. Lucas, the ranger who first found them, couldn't let it go. He'd been trained to see animals as wildlife, not people. But Khan had forced him to question everything. Lucas started filming short stories about human-animal bonds. He gave lectures in schools, not about how to avoid predators, but how to listen to them. He called his series, The Quiet Choice. Dr. Vance, the hard science conservationist, changed too. She submitted a full report on the event, but instead of recommending separation, her conclusion included a line no one had ever read in a government document. Sometimes the wild teaches us ethics we haven't earned yet. She proposed a new policy, VAR's observation before intervention, and surprisingly, it passed. But perhaps the most moving change came years later when a young boy named Ers Ethan, inspired by Lucas's stories, begged his parents to let him visit the sanctuary. He was nonverbal, afraid of animals, isolated. But when he sat under the same tree where the lioness once nursed her cub, he smiled. For the first time in his life, he smiled and said one word: beer. Something had been left in that forest, something invisible but real, a trail not of paw prints but of mercy. It began as a story few believed, a grizzly, a lioness, a bond stronger than instinct. But stories, real ones, don't end when the forest goes quiet. They grow like roots beneath the soil, unseen, but powerful. Years passed. Khan was never seen again. Rangers occasionally spotted his tracks near the northern ridges, and once a motion-triggered camera captured the silhouette of a massive bear crossing a stream at dawn. He was older, slower, but still Khan, a legend in fur. The lioness lived out her days in peace. Her cub, grown now, became the only lion in the sanctuary with a reputation for patience. He would share food, nuzzle the weakest, and once even lay beside an injured deer that had wandered through the gate. No one taught him to do that. He had seen it once from a bear. But the real legacy wasn't just theirs. It was in the people who heard what happened, who believed it. It was in the boy who spoke his first word under that same pine tree. In the ranger who traded tranquilizer rifles for storytelling, in the wildlife policy that began with an impossible moment of compassion. It was in the way the sanctuary changed its mission from protect and contain to protect, observe, connects. Every year, visitors came from across the country to walk the quiet trail leading to the clearing where Khan once stood between a dying cub and a pack of wolves. No cages were built there. No fences, just a small wooden sign etched by hand, "Here the wild chose kindness." And above it, mounted in iron, a sculpture of a roaring bear, not in fury, but in defiance of what nature was supposed to be. Because on that day, Khan changed the rules. Not with teeth, but with mercy. And so the forest remembers, not with noise, but with silence that speaks louder than we ever could. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Share it with someone who believes that compassion has no species and that even in the wildest places, love finds a way. Let's keep stories like this alive.